Elena? Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Strategic Priorities, Communications, and Intergovernmental Cooperation Committee meeting for Thursday, August 24th. And welcome to those viewers online as well who are watching here today. So, call to order. First off, is there any declarations of conflict of interest? Seeing none, could I have approval of the agenda? Moved by Councillor McKinnon, seconded by His Worship. The previous draft minutes from July 27th, 23, could I get a motion to approve those? Moved by His Worship and seconded by the Deputy Mayor Yankoff. Any business arising from those minutes?
Nope.
Nope.
Not saying a word.
Not saying a word. Jeez. I think we set a new standard here today with His Worship buttoning up. How about that? What? Can't say strange things never happen. All right. Moving on. We have a visitor here with us today. And so maybe I will turn it over to Janice, if you would like to introduce our guests here today. And as we can see them popping up on the screen, Andrew and coming in, so double Andrews. And anyway, Janice, if you want to take over from here, that would be great. Look at the 2023 Community Survey Results presentation.
Thank you very much, Chair. Today, I just wanted to introduce the team of consultants from Advanus who administered and managed this survey to present an overview. You guys can take it away.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone, for inviting us here. We won't take up too much of your time. We just want to go over some high-level results from the recent community survey. I'm just going to share my screen for those watching online so we can quickly talk through this. Can everyone see my screen okay?
Yep.
Super. So the results we're going to go over relate to the telephone survey that was conducted with 500 residents in June, so June 5th to 21st. They represent a random sample of residents that we contacted via random digit dialing. So we set quotas for age group, gender, and postal code to make sure that we got representation. Data has been weighted to match population proportions for the city by age group, gender, and postal code using the 2021 federal census. And when we look at results here, because of the methodology we've employed and the sample size, the overall sample has a margin of error of plus or minus 4.4%. So that means that when we look at results, we're confident that had we taken another sample of 500 residents, that we would see the same results within plus or minus 4.4%. So if satisfaction with the service is 50%, we're confident that the true value in the entire population is somewhere between 46 and 54%. What I won't be talking about today, but I want to acknowledge that happened at the same time, is the online survey. So at the same time, or just slightly after we started the, just after we started the telephone survey, we also launched an online survey that people could participate in. Could I just ask, anyone's got online has their, could mute their audio? I'm just getting a bit of feedback right now. So just a week after we started the telephone survey, we also sent a postcard to everybody in every household in Charlottetown with 3 ways that they could participate, or 3 methods they could access the online survey. They could scan a QR code, they could text Charlottetown to the number shown, or they could go directly to the site. And this was also made available by charlottetown.ca. We're not going over the results of those surveys today. We've got 926 people participating in that, because those are not generalizable to the general population. So because it's not a stratified random sample and there's a pretty low response rate when you consider the entire population, we can't necessarily extrapolate those results to say they are the opinions of the general population. But they do provide a lot of good information, and the city has access to that data as well. In terms of the survey results themselves, again, coming from the telephone survey, we asked a very overarching question about general quality of life that residents experience. Overall, 75%, or 3 in 4 citizens, say that they have a good or very good quality of life. The same question was asked in 2021 when this survey was previously administered, although on a slightly different scale, so we're not showing trended results here. However, what we have done here is shown that we have aligned this scale with what Advanis collects as part of its omnibus municipal survey. So we survey Canadians across the country on a range of issues throughout the year. So we can actually compare this result to what people who live in Halifax, St. John's, Moncton, basically all the large cities in Atlantic Canada say for the same question, and Charlottetown, say, is 75%. The municipal benchmark for this is 50%. So generally, more people in Charlottetown rate their overall quality of life as good or very good compared to the average that we see across the region. In terms of the factors that contribute to high quality of life, about 3 in 10 people mention that it's easy to get around the city, it's walkable, there's good transit. Approximately 1 in 4 people highlight the fact that they feel safe and that there's low crime rates. 1 in 5 people say it's the friendliness of the people that contribute to a good quality of life in the city. And there's also about between 1 in 6 and 1 in 5 people say there's lots of things to do, there's plenty of green space, and there's good municipal services. We only had 4% of people who rated the quality of life in the city as poor or very poor. So just very qualitatively, we got some feedback on why they think what factors they think contribute to a poor quality of life. So there were some mentions of lack of affordability, lack of affordability in general, also in terms of the cost and availability of housing, homelessness, and then also some comments contrary to the positive factors, where people say, actually, I think there's poor or limited municipal services, it's difficult to get around, and there's issues with road and infrastructure. Again, very qualitative comments. We only had 20 people provide input in that from the 500 people who participated in the survey. In terms of general perceptions of Charlottetown, we see that 6 in 10 people say strongly agree that they're very proud to say they live in Charlottetown, and nearly half of people saying they strongly agree that Charlottetown is a welcoming and inclusive community, and about 6 in 10 people saying that generally they feel safe living in the city. So very few people are disagreeing with any of these overarching statements about Charlottetown. In terms of the overall satisfaction with the level and quality of services provided, we had 87% of people say they are either very satisfied or somewhat satisfied with the services provided by the city. This is very similar to what we saw when the same survey was administered in 2021. We had 89% of people agree with that there. And then comparing that again to the average that we've seen in Advanis' self-sponsored omnibus survey, across other major Atlantic cities, it's proportionally higher. So we only had 70% on average across those other cities combined say that they're very satisfied with the services provided by their particular municipality, compared to 87% in Charlottetown. I won't go through all of these in detail, but generally satisfaction with community services, at least 7 in 10 are satisfied with those the community services listed here. There's a slightly higher percentage, although it's not, again, it's not a majority by any stretch of the imagination. It's approximately 1 in 7 people say that they're dissatisfied with active transportation routes, trails and pathways, sustainability programs, indoor recreation facilities, and urban forestry initiatives. In terms of infrastructure and development, again, at least 6 in 10 people say they are satisfied with the services provided. There is slightly higher dissatisfaction, however, with sidewalk and road infrastructure and sidewalk and road maintenance, and also short-term rental regulations.
Mr. Chair, could I ask a question on the last one?
Absolutely.
Yeah, can you just go to the slide there? So just go down to short-term rental regulations. What was the question you asked?
So we literally asked what's on the bottom of the screen there. So how satisfied are you with the following infrastructure and development services? And the question was short-term rental regulations. So we just listed these out. We repeated each of these. They were randomized in order. And we just literally asked, how satisfied are you with short-term rental regulations to be implemented in October 2023. I should note that 30% of people here said don't know, but there were 27% of people who said they're dissatisfied.
Yeah, and that's what I picked up on, because when you use the term short-term rentals, most people look at you like you have two heads on, because you have to just say Airbnb, and so Airbnb, they connect with it very quickly. So
Yep.
That's why I'd say that 30% doesn't know, like, what are you talking about? And then you just move on. Yeah, so did you modify the question by saying, such as Airbnb, or just what were your feelings about short-term rental regulations? That's all you asked, correct?
No, it was just asked as shown. So the interviewers, just to maintain consistency, just don't offer explanations. They just repeat the question if they're asked to explain this.
Thank you.
So that's, again, to your point, it's probably why there's 30% of people saying they don't know. Yeah.
I have another question here from CAO Ellen or Andrew, if you don't mind.
Thank
Absolutely.
you, Mr. Chair. I just want to offer a correction. So in the brackets there, it says to be implemented October 2023. Those regulations are already in place. They're adopted.
Yeah.
So I just want to clarify that for the minutes for when this goes forward.
What will be implemented at the end of October 2023 will be the short-term rental licensing bylaw.
Licensing system.
Yeah, but
Yeah, it's the
we do
licensing
have
system.
regulations in place,
That's correct.
and we have other things to do with that, but thank you.
Was there another question on this, or?
No, go ahead, Andrew.
Excellent. So in terms of satisfaction with community safety services, 9 in 10 people are satisfied with the fire services, close to the same amount with police services, and then at least 7 in 10 people with efforts in crime control and speed and traffic enforcement. Now, in terms of one thing we do in relation to all of this, we ask people how satisfied they are with all these services. We don't necessarily ask them how important do you think these services are, or how much do they contribute towards your overall satisfaction with the services provided by the City of Charlottetown. What we do instead is we do something called a key driver analysis, which is a regression model, which basically assesses the impact each of those factors that we just looked at have on people's overall satisfaction. So it's kind of looking at the correlation between somebody's satisfaction with, say, road and infrastructure, and the relationship that has, or the impact that has, on their overall rating. And what this allows us to do is understand which of these factors have the greatest impact, have a significant impact on the overall satisfaction. So if you were to prioritize some of these things, which of these would have the greatest impact in increasing the percentage of people who are satisfied with services overall? So I'm not going to go through the numbers too much here, but just looking at the chart on the left, the quadrant on the left, what this helps us understand is which areas are likely to have a high impact and are currently performing relatively lower compared to the other significant factors, versus ones that are performing better and have lower impact. So in the top left quadrant here, you can see that there are three services or factors that have a significant impact on people's overall satisfaction level: sidewalk and road maintenance, efforts in crime control, and recreation programs. What this chart is telling us is that if you were needed to prioritize some of these things, these are the ones that you have room to improve on relative to other factors, and would have the most impact on increasing the percentage of people who are satisfied with services overall. So that's why they're in the primary improve quadrant there. Just below that, in the secondary improve, these are things that, again, have relatively a smaller proportion of people who say they're very satisfied with these services compared to other services, but have also, just relative to the ones above them, slightly lower impact. So improvements in these will have more marginal gains compared to the ones above them. So those would be indoor recreation facilities and community events and local tourism initiatives. The drivers on the right of the chart, so in the monitor and maintain, there's actually none in the maintain, but in the monitor quadrant there, these are things that are relatively performing better right now, but also have a limited impact on overall satisfaction. So these are things that if you were to if satisfaction was to drop with these things, you would see some downward movement in overall satisfaction, but there isn't as much to gain by improving them. So those things would be customer service provided by the city staff, parks and green space, and field of safety. So those things are already performing well. They're things that you want to maintain if you want to maintain a high proportion of people who are satisfied overall.
Mr. Chair, can I just ask a question?
Absolutely.
Andrew, I have a question here for you.
Andrew, just in the bottom part of your 1, 2, 3 to 8, performance score is associated with the proportion of residents who selected very satisfied or very safe. But I see our largest scores were always, or not always, but by majority, somewhat satisfied. So
yes.
Is this skewed a bit, or did you look at, and I'm not telling you how to do the survey or how to present your calculations or
Yes.
results. You never looked at combining very satisfied with somewhat satisfied to get a better idea of what was primary improve, secondary improve, monitor, and maintain?
So the challenge with that on a survey like this is, and I'm just kind of flipping very quickly back, the top 2 box, as we refer to it, so very satisfied plus somewhat satisfied, there's so many people in there, it is hard to actually differentiate between the drivers when you look at the top 2. So had some of these scores that we're looking at right now, had there been a lot more variation in these scores, and maybe only 50% of people are satisfied with most of these things, then absolutely we would look at the top 2 box to determine which are the primary drivers. Okay. In this case, the top 2 box accounts for, in most cases, at least 60, if not 70 or 80% of people. So it's hard to model the data based on just that. So that's why we look at the top box. That's why we look at very satisfied as the indicator. So we're basically, if I go back to this slide here where we're looking at the overall satisfaction score, rather than trying to move this 12% of people who are not satisfied into somewhat satisfied and very satisfied, we're trying to move as many people as we can into the very satisfied box, which is saying what would it take to move people into that. So yeah, it's to your question, when we start the regression analysis for the key drivers, we do start by looking up top 2 box, but if there is not enough variability to get an accurate picture on to differentiate between the drivers, we look at top box instead, so the very satisfied. Does that answer your question?
Thank you very much. It does answer my question. Thank you.
Super. I just have a few more slides. I'm very cognizant of time. I know there's lots of things on the agenda in addition to this. We asked a few questions around the city's vision statement. We presented people with a vision statement: respect the past, embrace the future, and create a community for everyone. 39% of people rated this as good or excellent. Another 38% said it was also acceptable. In terms of importance of strategic priorities, again, because we're just asking how important it is, lots of people tell us it is important. The ones that that kind of had a higher agreement in terms of importance were infrastructure and environmental projects to address the growing city, and community building and placemaking initiatives. So we had at least 2/3 of people say those are important initiatives. Oh, sorry, strategic priorities. In terms of performance of corporate priorities and initiatives, 6 in 10 people say the city is doing an excellent or good job with community safety and cleanliness initiatives. Another 1 in 2 people are saying diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives are good or excellent. There's slightly less agreement or more diverse opinions when it comes to long-term growth and development. We've got 29% of people saying those are good or excellent, a similar proportion saying it's acceptable, and 35% of people saying they're poor or very poor. Finally, we asked a few questions around communications among those we contacted. So of those we surveyed, just under half said they have had some interaction or contact with the city in the past 12 months. Most commonly, that's been by phone, but also nearly half of people said they've had some sort of in-person interaction as well. When they have had that contact, 4 in 10, 82% of people said they're satisfied with the customer services they receive from the city staff. And considering the information that they receive from the city of Charlottetown, 6 in 10 people say they get just enough information. Virtually nobody says they get too much information, but about 1/3 of people say they would like more information. They're receiving too little right now. And in terms of the way they would prefer to receive that information, about half of people say social media is the format they would like to receive it in. Another 4 in 10 people say the city's website, and about 1/3 of people say email is their preferred communication method of receiving that information. So those are just the highlights of the results we shared. We do have the city has been provided with the full data set, and there's some analysis on some subsegments below that of the 500 people that we contacted. But those are just the high-level results that we have to share with you today. So if there are any other questions.
Very good presentation, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, very insightful. Any questions? Councillor McKinnon, Deputy Mayor. The question is, Andrew, is a copy of this presentation come to us?
It has. I'm not sure if it's been distributed, but I can arrange that after this meeting. I'll just contact Janice to coordinate that. Okay. If it hasn't been distributed already.
All kinds of finger pointing going on in here, so I think we're good.
Okay.
Yeah. I just have a question about and this is always one of my concerns with surveys. I mean, I think we hit our target on the 500, right? We were looking for 500 phone interviews, I believe, were we not? Right, and our, I guess, would be a paltry response on our other 926. Is that significantly lower?
So the 500, so 500 is set just so we can achieve that plus or minus 4.4% margin of error. So it's a big enough sample size to be able to confidently report results out at the level we've looked at. If we needed to do more in-depth analysis on, say, younger residents or families or some subsegments, you'd probably want a larger base size. But 500 has been selected as a good sample size to report these results out accurately, given the methodology for telephone. For online, essentially the online survey is a census. So I would perhaps look at it through that lens, because we're contacting everybody where the telephone survey, we're randomly selecting people. We're contacting every household in the city via postcard. and we got 926 responses out of, and I don't know this number off the top of my head. I think there's a population of about 36,000 in Charlottetown. So maybe the adult population is under 30,000, but still that would be a response rate in the single digits in terms of the census. So it's not a random sample of the population, but a census. Obviously, the Statistics Canada, when they do a census, they get a response rate in the 80s or 90s because they, after sending out the initial invites to participate in the census, they will follow up to the nth degree to make sure that everybody participates, so they get really high response rates. So had we got tens of thousands of people respond via the postal cards to the online survey, you could actually use those results as census as results of a census, not a random sample, but as a census. But given that it's 926, it's really more directional. It's more in tune with public engagement, where people who are motivated to participate are participating. So you maybe hear people with the most opinionated perspectives on city governance and services. Does that help?
Yeah, and I guess that's part of my always question about that is, you've clearly stated at the bottom, it's not generalizable to the overall population. It's those who have taken the initiative to respond. And I guess that's kind of where I want to be respectful of the ones who did take the time of their own volition to fill out, to respond by one of the three methods. And so I think it's important that we have a look at that information, although it may not be statistically significant or generalizable. I want to. I don't want to totally disregard that, saying, well, we can't generalize anything about it, so therefore we're not going to do anything with it. So I guess what I'm wondering is what would be your recommendations in terms of what we do with the data that we did receive from that? You were mentioning sort of directional stuff, but
yes. So two things are related to that. One, this is just a short presentation pulled out of the main report. The main report that we provided last month does include the results for the online survey as well as the telephone survey. So the city has those already. In terms of reporting it out, that is, as I say, more like a public engagement initiative, in that what we typically see our government clients do with that information is presented as a what we heard document. So again, making it very clear that it's not a statistically representative sample of the population. But reporting back to the public to say, we asked you what you thought, and this is what we heard, and just making sure that there's appropriate caveats around the fact that the methodology is not statistically reliable. That's generally what we see our kind of public sector and government clients do with this sort of information. It also acknowledges, to your point, that people have taken the time and effort to participate in these things, and it's something that you, as a government, value people's input in, and you get a lot of really good information out of that. One thing I didn't mention here is that in addition to the online survey had exactly the same questions as the telephone survey, slightly modified given the format, just to make it more readable. But there was also an additional question where people could just write anything in at the end. And there's a lot of rich comments in there, a lot of people because people who are motivated to do the online survey tend to have a lot of opinions, a lot of really good information in there. So it's worth analyzing those qualitative responses to, again, produce something that says, we asked you the question and this is what we heard. So that's what I would recommend in terms of the use of the online data.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else have any questions? Nope. Good. All right, Andrew. Thank you very much for your presentation. Great to meet you, and appreciate all the work you put in on behalf of the city. And On behalf of City Council and the Mayor and the CAO, we certainly thank you again, and thanks for joining us here today and being part of our meeting.
Thank you very much. Appreciate being invited.
Yeah, thanks a lot, everybody.
All right.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Okay. So next steps with that, it'll just be presented as information at our next council meetings. Eleanor, would that be the logical step?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it would be beneficial if all of council could have a presentation from the consultant to walk them through that. So that's what we'll plan for.
Oh, okay. Thank you. All right, next item, 6B, sale of remnant right-of-way, update on progress, Dorchester King Alleyway. CAO Eleanor, if you'd like to take this over.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is
And
just
we have Paul Johnson here as in attendance as well, too.
Thanks, Paul. This is just really just an information and kind of update. So back in March, there was a resolution made by council to close down public right-of-way. And this is just providing some information that we're now starting the process to go to tender to put it up for sale. So we have a valuation on it. It's $24,600. And as part of that tender process, there will be conditions outlined for the purchaser, such as it has to be developed within a certain amount of time. And also, because it's a public right-of-way that's being taken away, we'll also be asking for some sort of public amenity within that development as well. And there'll be space to kind of negotiate of what that public amenity is. Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you for that, Eleanor. New business. Any items for new business coming up? No? All good? All right, motion to adjourn. Moved by Deputy Mayor Yankoff, seconded by Councillor McKinnon. Thank you for coming today, and have yourself a great day.